The stars around Vega burned with the light of dying ships. Commander Do-hyun gripped the rail of his bridge as another explosion lit up the darkness. The human fleet was small compared to their enemies, but they fought with a fury that surprised even their alien allies. "Sir, the Kralith are breaking through Sector 7, reported Lieutenant Haewon from her position at the tactical station. Her voice stayed calm even as the ship shook from enemy fire. The young officer had learned to hide her fear well during the 3 years of constant battle. Do-hyun looked at the holographic display floating above the command center. Red dots marked enemy positions, and there were far too many of them. The Kralith swarm moved like a living thing, their bioships twisting through space in patterns that hurt to watch. Each ship was grown rather than built, covered in thick armor that looked like insect shells. "Tell Captain Young-sik to move his squadron to support the Valdris ships," Do-hyun ordered. "And get me a direct line to Admiral Tae-ho on the flagship." The Terran Defense Fleet had only been part of the Galactic Coalition for 50 years. Humans were still the newest members, barely trusted with important missions. But the war against the Kralith had changed everything. When facing extinction, old prejudices mattered less than fighting skill. On the main screen, Do-hyun watched the crystalline ships of the Valdris fleet, fire beams of pure light at the approaching enemy. The Valdris were beautiful to look at, their ships grown from living crystal that sparkled even in the dark of space. But their weapons, while powerful, took too long to charge between shots. The lumens fought differently. These beings of pure energy had no solid ships at all. Instead, they formed themselves into shapes that could travel through space and fight. They moved faster than anything else in the galaxy, but they were fragile. A single hit from a Kralith weapon could scatter a lumen across light years of space. "Incoming transmission from Admiral Tae-ho," Haewon announced. The hologram of a stern-faced man appeared before Do-hyun. Admiral Tae-ho looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes and gray in his black hair. The war had aged all of them. "Commander, we're losing this battle," Tae-ho said without any greeting. "The Kralith have too many ships. We need to fall. Back to the second defense line." Do-hyun felt his jaw tighten. They had been falling back for months now. Every retreat meant another star system would fall to the Kralith. Another billion lives would be consumed by the swarm. "Sir, what about the civilians on Vega Prime? We can't just leave them." "We have evacuation ships working around the clock," Tae-ho replied. "But if we stay and fight here, we'll lose everything. At least if we retreat, we can save some of our fleet." Before Do-hyun could answer, alarms began screaming throughout the ship. Haewon's fingers flew over her controls as new data flooded the tactical display. "Sir, I'm reading massive energy signatures from the galactic core," she said, her voice filled with confusion. "The readings don't match anything in our database." Do-hyun frowned. The galactic core was thousands of light years away. What could be happening there that they could detect from this distance? "Are you sure about these readings?" Admiral Tae-ho asked. His image flickered as the ship's communications struggled with interference. "Yes, sir. And it's not just us. I'm getting reports from monitoring stations all across the galaxy. Something big is happening out there." On the tactical display, the battle continued to rage. Kralith bioships swarmed around the coalition forces like angry insects. Their weapons fired streams of acid that could eat through the strongest armor. When a ship was destroyed, the Kralith would often capture the crew alive. Everyone knew what happened to prisoners taken by the swarm. "Sir, the energy readings are getting stronger," Haewon reported. Whatever's happening at the galactic core, it's accelerating. Do-hyun made a decision. Send all the data to Fleet Command and get me Captain Soo-jin on the Soul's Pride. The image of Admiral Tae-ho was replaced by that of a young woman with short black hair and determined eyes. Captain Soo-jin commanded the most advanced ship in the human fleet, a vessel that combined human engineering with alien technology. Do-hyun, we're taking heavy fire over here, Soo-jin said immediately. My ship can handle it, but the older vessels are struggling. I know. But we have a bigger problem. Check your long-range sensors. Tell me what you see. Soo-jin turned away from the screen for a moment. Do-hyun could hear the sounds of battle in the background, alarms, shouted orders, and the deep vibration of weapons firing. I see it, Soo-jin said when she turned back. These readings are impossible. The amount of energy being generated at the galactic core could power our entire fleet for 1,000 years. Another explosion rocked Do-hyun's ship. Through the viewport, he could see a Valdris cruiser break apart under Krelith fire. The beautiful crystal structure shattered like glass, its light fading as it died. Commander, Haewon called out urgently. The Krelith are changing their attack pattern. They're pulling back from some sectors. Do-hyun looked at the tactical display again. The young officer was right. The Krelith ships, which had been pressing their attack relentlessly, were suddenly acting differently. Some groups were retreating, while others seemed confused. Are they responding to the energy signatures too? Do-hyun wondered aloud. The Krelith were ancient enemies. They had been consuming worlds for over 3 centuries. The Coalition had learned that they were highly sensitive to certain types of energy. If something at the galactic core was affecting them, it had to be incredibly powerful. Sir, Haewon said, I'm getting a priority message from Coalition Command. All fleets are ordered to fall back to defensive positions immediately. Do-hyun felt a chill run down his spine. Coalition Command never ordered a general retreat unless something truly terrible was happening. What's the situation report? He asked. Multiple monitoring stations have gone dark. The ones still reporting say the energy signatures are unlike anything in recorded history. They're recommending we prepare for a galaxy-wide threat. The bridge fell silent except for the constant hum of the ship's systems. Do-hyun looked around, at his crew. These men and women had followed him through 3 years of brutal war. They had seen friends die and worlds burn. But the fear in their eyes now was different. Set course for the rally point, Do-hyun ordered finally, and signal the fleet to begin withdrawal. As the human ships turned away from the battle, Do-hyun couldn't shake the feeling that they were running from one enemy only to face something much worse. The energy readings from the galactic core continued to grow stronger with each passing hour. In his private quarters later, Do-hyun reviewed the data again. The numbers made no sense. Whatever was happening at the center of the galaxy was releasing more energy than entire star systems. And if the historical records were correct, nothing that powerful should exist. He thought about the Krelith's strange behavior during the battle. These creatures had shown no fear in 3 centuries of war. They consumed everything in their path without hesitation. But something about those energy signatures had made them pause. Do-hyun closed his eyes and tried to rest, but sleep wouldn't come. Deep in his bones, he felt that everything was about to change. The war against the Krelith had been hard enough. Now, it seemed, the galaxy faced something infinitely worse. Outside his window, the stars looked the same as always. But Do-hyun knew that somewhere among them an ancient power was stirring, and when it fully awakened, nothing would ever be the same again. Dr. Sujin moved through the ancient archives of Sanctuary Station like a woman possessed. Her hands shook slightly as she pulled data crystals from storage units that hadn't been opened in decades. Beside her, the insectoid scholar Vextal clicked. His mandibles and what she had learned meant deep concern. "The patterns are all wrong," Sujin muttered, comparing holographic displays of the energy readings from the galactic core. "These signatures don't match anything in Coalition records." Vextal's compound eyes reflected the blue light from the data screens. His species, the Cathari, had been part of the Coalition for over 2,000 years. If anyone would recognize ancient threats, it would be him. "Dr. Sujin," Vextal said in his translated voice, "perhaps we should examine records from before the Coalition was formed. There are texts here that predate even my people's written history." Sujin nodded and pulled up the oldest files in the archive. Most were fragmentary, damaged by time and repeated copying. But as she searched, certain words kept appearing. Void, bringers, the long dark, and most disturbing of all, Black Armada. "Vextal, look at this." Sujin highlighted a passage from an ancient Valdris text. It speaks of enemies that came from the spaces between stars, beings that could unmake reality itself. The Cathari scholar moved closer, his 6 legs clicking on the metal floor. "I have heard whispers of such stories. My grandfather spoke of nightmares that his grandfather had told him, dreams of ships darker than space coming to end all things." Meanwhile, across the galaxy, Lieutenant Tejo guided his reconnaissance ship through the outer edge of the energy disturbance. His small vessel, the Silent Runner, was designed for stealth and exploration. If anyone could get close enough to see what was happening, it would be him. "Sensors are going crazy," reported his pilot, Corporal Min-Ah. She was one of the best engineers in the human fleet, and her modifications to their ship had saved their lives more times than Tai-Ho could. "Count. Whatever's out there, it's big." Through the viewport, space looked normal. Stars twinkled in the distance, and the familiar glow of nebulae painted the darkness in soft colors. But their instruments told a different story. "Energy readings are off the charts," Mina continued, "and I'm detecting gravitational anomalies that shouldn't be possible." Tejo studied the displays. They were still light years away from the source, but already their sensors were struggling to process the data. "Take us closer, but slowly. If things get dangerous, we jump out immediately." As they moved deeper into the disturbance, something began to appear on their long-range scanners. At first, it looked like sensor errors, shadows where there should be nothing. But gradually, shapes began to emerge from what appeared to be empty space. "Sir," Minna whispered, "you need to see this." On the main screen, a structure materialized. That defied comprehension. It was a ship, but larger than anything in recorded history. The hull was perfectly black, so dark it seemed to absorb light itself. Strange geometries covered its surface, patterns that hurt to look at directly. "How big is that thing?" Tejo asked. Minna checked her instruments twice before answering. "It's the size of a small moon, sir, and there are more of them." As if, summoned by her words, dozens of similar shapes began appearing around them. Ships that emerged from nowhere, their dark hulls gleaming with an inner light that belonged to no spectrum Tai-Ho recognized. "We need to get out of here," he said, but Mina was already shaking her head. "Sir, our jump drive isn't responding. Something is interfering with our navigation systems." Back on Sanctuary Station, Sujin felt a chill as she read an ancient text that seemed to describe exactly what Taeho was witnessing. The document was written in Old Lumeric, a language that predated most current civilizations. "They come from the void between realities," she translated aloud. "Ships of impossible darkness, crewed by minds that have forgotten the meaning of existence. They do not conquer or consume. They simply unmake." Vextal's mandibles clicked rapidly. "Dr. Sujin, there is something else. This text mentions a species that was immune to their reality-changing powers, a people who could remember what others forgot." Sujin looked up from her translation. "Which species?" "The text calls them the Wanderers. It says they came from far away, carrying memories of a war that destroyed their home galaxy." A cold certainty settled in Sujin's stomach. She pulled up genetic records of all coalition species and compared them to the ancient descriptions. Only one match appeared: humanity. Meanwhile, Taeho and Minna watched in horror as space itself began to change around the Black Armada. Stars flickered and went out, not destroyed but simply erased as if they had never existed. The very fabric of reality seemed to bend and twist around the dark ships. "Sir, I'm trying every communication frequency we have," Minna reported. "But these things aren't responding to any known protocol." "Maybe they don't communicate the way we do," Taeho said. As a human, he had learned that different species had wildly different ways of thinking. But these entities seemed beyond alien. They felt fundamentally wrong. On his personal communicator, an urgent message appeared from Coalition Command. All ships were ordered to maintain a safe distance from the anomaly and report any unusual phenomena. Taeho almost laughed at the absurdity. Everything about this situation was unusual. "Sir," Minna said suddenly, "I think I know why our jump drive isn't working. These ships aren't just in our space. They're in multiple dimensions at once. They're blocking us from accessing hyperspace." Before Taeho could respond, one of the dark ships turned toward them. Despite being light years away, he felt as if something vast and terrible was looking directly at him. The sensation was unlike anything he had ever experienced, a cold intelligence that seemed to see through him to his very soul. "Min-Ah, emergency power to engines. Get us out of here now." "I'm trying, sir, but..." The world around them changed. For a moment that lasted forever. Taeho felt his mind touched by something that shouldn't exist. Images flashed through his consciousness. Galaxies burning, civilizations ending not in fire, but in complete erasure, and beings of pure darkness, singing songs that unmade reality. Then, suddenly, they were free. Their ship jumped back into normal space, leaving the anomaly far behind. Both Taeho and Minna were gasping, covered in sweat despite the cool air of their cabin. "What was that?" Minna whispered. Taeho didn't answer immediately. He was busy checking their sensor logs, trying to understand what had happened. According to their instruments, they had been near the anomaly for 3 hours, but it felt like a lifetime. "Sir, look at this," Minna said, pointing to her engineering display. "Our ship's computer systems were affected by whatever happened back there. But here's the strange part. My personal modifications, the ones I built using human intuition rather than standard engineering, they're completely unaffected." Back on Sanctuary Station, Sujin made a discovery that changed everything. In the deepest archives, she found a record that had been sealed for millennia. It spoke of the last great war against the Voidbringers and how one species had escaped the destruction by fleeing to distant galaxies. "Vextal," she said, her voice filled with growing horror and wonder. "I think I know why humans can resist their influence. We're not from this galaxy originally. We're descendants of refugees from their last war." The Cathari scholar was quiet for a long moment. "If that is true," he finally said, "then humanity may be the only hope this galaxy has." As Su-Jin read more of the ancient text, she learned that the Voidbringers didn't just destroy civilizations, they erased them from existence itself. Only beings with genetic memory of their previous attacks could remember what had been lost. She thought of Tai-Ho and Min-Ah out there facing these ancient horrors. They didn't know it yet, but they might be the only ones who could survive what was coming. The Black Armada was awakening, and the galaxy's only defense was a species that didn't even know its own true origin. Captain Ji-Woo stood on the observation deck of her ship, watching the Altair system burn. But this wasn't the kind of destruction she had seen before in the war against the Krelith. This was something far worse. The planet that had once been. Altair Prime simply wasn't there anymore, not destroyed, not reduced to rubble, completely absent, as if it had never existed. The space where 50 million people had lived and worked was empty. Even the star's gravitational field seemed confused, wobbling slightly as it tried to account for mass that was no longer there. "Captain," her communications officer called out, "we're receiving scattered transmissions from the outer colonies. They're asking about evacuation schedules for Altair Prime." Ji-Woo felt a chill run down her spine. "Tell me exactly what they're saying." The young officer, Seok-Jin, looked at his screen with confusion. "They're asking when the evacuation ships will arrive to pick up civilians from the planet's capital city. Sir, they seem to think Altair Prime still exists." This was the most terrifying part of fighting the Black Armada. When they erased something from existence, most minds couldn't comprehend the loss. People would remember making plans to visit, places that no longer existed. They would talk about friends and family who had never been born. Only humans seemed able to hold on to memories of what had been erased. "Sir," Seok-Jin continued, "I'm getting reports from other ships in our fleet. The alien crews don't remember Altair Prime at all. They think this system only ever had gas giants and asteroid fields." Ji-Woo closed her eyes and tried to remember everything she could about the lost world. 50 million people, including 30,000 humans who had settled there over the past century. Children who would never grow up, artists who would never create, scientists who would never make discoveries. All of it gone, and only human minds could mourn the loss. Her thoughts were interrupted by an urgent signal from the bridge. "Captain, we have incoming ships. They're not responding to any communication attempts." Ji-Woo hurried back to the command center. On the main screen, 3 vessels approached from the direction of the Galactic Core. They were smaller than the massive ships Tai-Ho had reported, but still larger than anything in the Coalition fleet. Their hulls were the same impossible black, seeming to absorb all light that touched them. "All ships, battle stations," Ji-Woo ordered. "Do not fire unless fired upon. We need to learn everything we can about these things." The dark ships moved, in perfect formation, their flight pattern defying the laws of physics. They turned without showing any sign of thrust, accelerated without exhaust, and seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. On her personal communicator, Ji-Woo received a priority message from Dr. Boram, the fleet's chief psychologist and one of the few humans who had shown any ability to understand alien psychology. "Captain, I need to speak with you immediately. I've been analyzing the reports from our encounters with these entities, and I think I understand what they're doing." Dr. Boram appeared on the main screen moments later. She looked exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes and her usually neat hair pulled back messily. "Captain, these Voidbringers aren't just erasing things randomly. They're targeting specific aspects of reality. They're trying to weaken the foundations of existence itself." "What do you mean?" Jiwoo asked. "Every world they've erased, every ship they've removed from existence, they all had something in common. They were all points where different forms of life intersected. Altair Prime was home to 12 different species. The trading station at Kepler 442 was a meeting place for dozens of civilizations. They're targeting diversity itself." Before Jiwoo could respond, the 3 dark ships suddenly changed course. They moved directly toward her fleet, and as they approached, reality around them began to bend and twist. "Captain," Seokjin called, out in a panicked voice, "the Valdris ships are reporting system failures. Their crystal matrix is becoming unstable." On the tactical display, Jiwoo watched in horror as the beautiful crystalline vessels of their allies began to lose cohesion. The living crystal that formed their hulls was turning gray and lifeless, as if the very concept of their existence was being drained away. "The Lumen fighters are also affected," reported Lieutenant Hyo Jin from the science station. "Their energy, matrices are becoming chaotic. They're having trouble maintaining physical form." But the human ships remained unaffected. Whatever force the dark vessels were projecting, it couldn't touch them. This realization sent a mixture of relief and terror through Jiwoo's mind. If humans were immune to the Voidbringer's primary weapon, it meant they were the galaxy's only defense. It also meant they were likely targets for more direct attacks. "All human vessels, form up around the alien ships," Jiwoo ordered. "Use your hulls to shield them from whatever these things are projecting." As the human ships moved to protect their allies, something unexpected happened. The dark vessels stopped their advance. For several minutes, they simply floated in space, as if studying this new development. Then they began to communicate. It wasn't words or even thoughts as any organic mind would understand them. Instead, concepts were forced directly into the consciousness of everyone in the fleet. Images of vast emptiness, the cold peace of non-existence, and the promise of an end to all suffering through the simple cessation of being. Most of the alien crew members immediately began showing signs of mental distress. The Valdris started singing death songs, while the Cathari fell into catatonic states. But the humans, while disturbed by the experience, remained functional. "Captain," Dr. Boram said over the communication link, "I'm monitoring the psychological effects of their communication attempt. The humans in our fleet are showing stress responses, but their core mental functions remain intact. Everyone else is experiencing various forms of breakdown." Jiwoo gritted her teeth. "Can we communicate back?" "I wouldn't recommend it. From what I can tell, direct mental contact with these entities is extremely dangerous. But there might be another way." On her personal screen, Boram began displaying brain scan data. "Captain, I've been studying the difference between human and alien responses to the Voidbringers. It's not just that we're immune, we're actively rejecting their influence. Our minds seem to have built-in defenses against reality manipulation." The implications hit Jiwoo like a physical blow. "You think we've encountered them before?" "More than that. I think we evolved specifically to fight them. The genetic markers. Dr. Sujin found the way our technology interfaces with their systems, our resistance to their mental attacks, it all points to one conclusion. Humanity isn't native to this galaxy. We're the descendants of refugees from their last campaign of erasure. As if responding to this realization, the three dark ships suddenly released a pulse of energy that washed over the entire fleet. Ji-woo felt it pass through her like a cold wind, carrying with it impressions of vast intelligence and ancient purpose. When the pulse passed, something had changed. The space around them looked the same, but Ji-woo knew instinctively that something was missing. She couldn't remember what, but the absence felt like a hole in her memory. "Captain," Seok-jin said with confusion in his voice, "I'm getting reports from all ships. Everyone is experiencing the same thing, the feeling that something important has been forgotten." Dr. Bo-ram's face appeared on the screen again, her expression grim. "They erased something from our immediate past. Probably the last few minutes of combat data or tactical information. It's a warning, Captain. They're showing us what they can do." The three dark ships began to withdraw, moving back toward the galactic core with the same impossible grace they had shown in their approach. But before they disappeared completely, they left behind a final message. Not in words, but in pure concept. The message was simple and terrifying. "We remember you, children of the lost galaxy. Your immunity will not save you this time. We have learned. We have adapted. Soon even memory itself will be ours to command." As the enemy vessels vanished into the distance, Ji-woo found herself facing a horrible truth. Humanity wasn't just the galaxy's last hope against the Black Armada. They were also its primary target. The Voidbringers hadn't returned randomly. They had come specifically to finish the job they had started in another galaxy eons ago. "All ships fall back to Coalition space," Ji-woo ordered, "and get me a direct line to command. We need to tell them that this war isn't just about survival. It's personal." The retreat began, but Ji-woo knew it was only a temporary respite. The Black Armada was coming, and this time they had spent millennia preparing for humanity's resistance. The next encounter would not end with a simple withdrawal. Admiral Dae-jung never thought he would find himself sitting across from a Kralith hive queen. The creature that faced him in the neutral meeting chamber was a nightmare made flesh, 3 meters tall with chitinous armor covering most of her body and 6 arms that ended in razor-sharp claws. Her compound eyes reflected the chamber's lights in patterns that hurt to look at directly. But for the first time in 3 centuries of war, a Kralith was not trying to kill him. "Human Admiral." The Queen spoke through a translation device that turned her clicking mandibles into words. "The Devourers of Stars approach. We must act together, or all life ends." The formal meeting was taking place on a small asteroid in neutral space, with representatives from all major factions present. Besides Dae-jung and Queen Zustai, there were delegates from the Valdris, Crystal Cities, the Lumen Energy Collectives, and a dozen other coalition species. The atmosphere was tense beyond description. "You'll forgive us if we find it hard to trust," said Ambassador Kyung-ho of the Valdris delegation. His crystalline form sparkled as he spoke. "Your species has consumed billions of our people over the past 3 centuries. Queen Zustai's mandibles clicked in what the translator rendered as bitter amusement. "And you all have killed many millions of our children warriors. But now greater death comes for all. The Void Makers care nothing for our small war." Dae-jung studied the intelligence reports spread across the table. The data was horrifying. In the past week, 17 star systems had simply vanished. Not destroyed, erased from existence as if they had never been. Entire civilizations had been wiped from reality, remembered only by human observers who seemed immune to the erasure effect. The question is whether we can work together, Daejung said carefully. Our species have very different ways of fighting. Different, yes, Queen Zustai agreed. But humans people show strange power against the Void Makers. Our war minds think this is key important for survival fighting. That was the heart of the matter. Every encounter with the Black Armada had proven the same thing. Only humans could resist their reality-warping abilities. When alien minds forgot erased worlds, humans remembered. When alien technology failed in the presence of Void-bringer, ships, human systems continued to function. Ambassador Yunji, one of humanity's most skilled diplomats, leaned forward. If we're going to make this alliance work, we need to understand each other's capabilities. Queen Zustai, what can the swarm offer in this fight? The Kralith Queen's head tilted in a gesture that somehow conveyed deep thought. We adapt quickly to new threats. Our bioships can grow during battle. Your human ships stay same form, yes? But our vessels adapt from each fight encounter. It was true. Kralith bioships were living creatures as much as they were weapons of war. They could evolve new defenses, grow new weapons, and adapt to enemy tactics in real time. Against conventional opponents, this made them nearly unstoppable. And what about the Voidbringer's ability to erase things from existence? Asked Dr. Jin Woo, the Coalition's leading expert on exotic physics. Can your ships adapt to that? Queen Zusthai's reply chilled the entire chamber. No adaptation possible against non-existence, but humans people remember what is lost erased. This means human minds can guide direct adaptation against what normal memory cannot hold. The implications were staggering. If humans could remember what had been erased, they could potentially help Kralith bioships develop defenses against weapons that others couldn't even recall being used. There's another factor we need to consider, said Captain So Young, who had been monitoring communications throughout the galaxy. The Voidbringers aren't just randomly erasing things, they're following a pattern. She activated a holographic display showing the galaxy with red markers indicating erased systems. At first glance, it looked random, but as the timeline progressed, a shape began to emerge. They're creating a spiral pattern, moving outward from the galactic core, So Young explained. And every system they've targeted has been a major intersection of trade routes or communication networks. Ambassador Yunji studied the pattern carefully. They're isolating us, breaking down our ability to coordinate and communicate. Worse than that, Dr. Jin Woo added grimly. If this pattern continues, they'll reach the major population centers within months. Earth, the Valdris home crystal, the Kralith primary hive worlds. They're all on the projected path. Queen Zusthai's entire body language changed, becoming more aggressive. Then we must strike attack before pattern completes. Waiting hiding brings only slow death for all species. Admiral Daejung looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives. 3 months ago, these species had been trying to exterminate each other. Now they were discussing a joint military campaign against an enemy that could erase their very existence. If we're going to do this, we need to pool our resources completely, he said. Full technology sharing, integrated command structure, and coordinated battle plans. The Valdris ambassador's crystalline form dimmed slightly. Our people will have difficulty fighting alongside those who have devoured our worlds. And our warriors' children will struggle not to consume those who have burned our hive sisters, Queen Zustai admitted. But Voidmakers offer worse fate than death. They offer never was. Captain So Young pulled up another display, this one showing fleet compositions. We have advantages if we can coordinate properly, Human ships are immune to their reality manipulation. Kralith bioships can adapt to new threats. Valdris crystal ships can channel massive amounts of energy. And the Lumen can move faster than anything else in known space. But how do we coordinate forces that have never worked together? Asked Ambassador Unji. Our communication protocols are completely different. Our tactics are built around fighting each other. It was Dr. Jin Wu who provided the answer. We use humans as the coordination interface. Our resistance to the Iabor Voidbringer's influence means we can maintain communication and memory even under their attacks. Human officers could serve as liaisons between different species' forces. Admiral Dae Jung felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. You're talking about putting human crews on Kralith bioships and Valdris crystal vessels. Our people would be surrounded by former enemies. Trust bond must be created quickly, Queen Zusthai said. Survival need overcomes old hatred. But humans people must prove worthy trustable of this great responsibility. The meeting continued for hours, hammering out details of an alliance. That would have been unthinkable weeks earlier. Human officers would be embedded with alien fleets to maintain communication and coordinate tactics. Kralith bioships would be modified to interface with human technology. Valdris crystal weapons would be integrated into human defensive systems. But perhaps the most important agreement was the establishment of joint research teams. If they were going to defeat an enemy that could manipulate reality itself, they needed to understand how their powers worked. There's one more thing, Captain So-Young said as the meeting was concluding. Our intelligence suggests the Voidbringers are building something at the galactic core. Something massive. She activated a final display showing long-range sensor data. Deep in the chaotic space around the galaxy's central black hole, massive structures were taking shape. They were larger than planets, built from materials that didn't exist in normal space-time. If they complete whatever they're building, So-Young continued, it might give them the power to erase entire galaxies at once. We're not just fighting for our civilizations anymore. We're fighting for the right of organic life to exist anywhere in the universe. The chamber fell silent as the full scope of their situation became clear. They weren't just defending their homes. They were fighting to prevent the complete erasure of all biological life from reality itself. Admiral Dae Jung stood up slowly. Then we'd better get started. Every day we wait, more systems disappear. And once they finish their construction project, talking won't matter anymore. As the representatives began filing out to return to their fleets, Queen Zusthai approached Dae Jung directly. Human Admiral, she said, my species has killed for 3 centuries. But never have we faced enemy threat that could make us never was. This alliance bond is our only hope chance for continued existence. Dae Jung looked into her alien eyes and saw something he never expected to find there. Fear. Not fear of death, but fear of complete erasure from reality. It was a terror that transcended species barriers. We'll find a way to stop them, he promised. Humans are stubborn that way. We don't give up easily. The Kralith Queen's mandibles clicked in what might have been approval. Then perhaps there is hope possibility after all. Dr. Hyo-Jin stared at the genetic analysis results for the 3rd time, unable to believe what the data was telling her. She had spent 2 weeks analyzing human DNA samples from across the galaxy, comparing them to genetic markers found in ancient ruins on dead worlds. The conclusion was inescapable, but it changed everything they thought they knew about humanity. Run the analysis again, she told her assistant, Dr. Sang-min. And this time, use the samples from the oldest human settlements. Sang-min looked up from his workstation with tired eyes. They had been working almost non-stop since the alliance with the Kralith was formed, trying to understand why humans were immune to the Voidbringer's reality manipulation. Hyojin, I've run this test 17 times. The results don't change. The laboratory on Sanctuary Station buzzed with activity as scientists from multiple species worked together on the greatest mystery of their time. Humans, Valdris, Cathari, and even a few Kralith researchers shared data and theories in an unprecedented collaboration. Show me the chronological progression, Hyojin said, pulling up a holographic display that filled half the laboratory. The genetic timeline appeared in three-dimensional space, showing the evolution of human DNA over millennia. But there was something wrong with the progression. Instead of the gradual changes expected from natural evolution, there were sudden jumps in complexity, as if human genetics had been artificially enhanced at specific points in history. Look at this marker. Here. Sangmin pointed to a cluster of genes that appeared suddenly in the timeline about 50,000 years ago. These sequences don't exist in any other known species. They're completely unique. Hyojin studied the anomalous genes more closely. They seemed to be related to memory formation and mental processing, but in ways that current science couldn't fully explain. What do these genes actually do? As far as we can tell, they create a kind of mental shield, Sangmin explained. They prevent external forces from altering memory formation or perception of reality. It's like humans have built-in protection against psychic manipulation. The implications sent a chill down Hyojin's spine. Protection against exactly the kind of reality manipulation the Voidbringers use. At that moment, Commander Wan Shik entered the laboratory with urgent news. He had been leading the joint military forces in experimental battles against isolated Voidbringer scouts using the new human Kralith hybrid vessels. Dr. Hyojin, we've made a breakthrough, Wan Shik announced. Pilot Ne Young has successfully interfaced with a captured Voidbringer scout ship. Hyojin turned away from her genetic data with surprise. That should be impossible. Every attempt to understand their technology has failed. Not with a human pilot, Wan Shik said with grim satisfaction. Ne Young can actually operate their systems without losing her sanity. We think it's connected to whatever makes humans immune to their reality manipulation. In the testing facility 3 levels below, Pilot Na Young sat in the command center of a small Voidbringer vessel that had been captured during the battle at Kepler 442. The ship's interior was unlike anything in known space. Surfaces that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once, controls that responded to thought rather than touch, and a navigation system that mapped not just space, but the underlying structure of reality itself. The ship's computer is trying to communicate with me, Na Young reported through her communication link. But it's not like talking to an AI. It's more like the ship itself is alive and aware. Dr. Hyojin and Commander Wan Shik rushed to the observation chamber overlooking the test facility. Through reinforced windows, they could see Na Young moving her hands over control surfaces that shifted and changed as she touched them. How is she not going insane? Hyojin wondered aloud. Every other species that had attempted to interface with Voidbringer technology had suffered immediate mental breakdown. She says it's like having a conversation with something that speaks a different language, Wan Shik explained. She can't understand the words, but she can sense the intent. And somehow, the ship recognizes her as compatible. On the test chamber's main display, impossible images began to appear. Maps of space that showed not just the location of stars and planets, but their position in the flow of time itself. Navigation charts that traced routes through dimensions that shouldn't exist. And most disturbing of all, records of other galaxies. Galaxies that had been completely erased from existence. My God, Hyojin whispered. It's showing her the Voidbringer's previous campaigns. The display shifted to show what appeared to be humanity's galaxy of origin. But unlike the current galaxy, this one was filled with impossible structures, space stations the size of solar systems, artificial worlds that existed in folded space-time, and technologies that treated the laws of physics as mere suggestions. The ship is telling me something, Na-young said, her voice strained with concentration. It's showing me the war that destroyed our original home. The humans there weren't just advanced. They were the guardians of reality itself. More images flowed across the display. Massive human fleets fighting against the Black Armada in battles that raged across multiple dimensions. Weapons that could reshape the fundamental forces of the universe and ultimately defeat, not through lack of strength, but because the enemy had learned to use humanity's own nature against them. The original humans were wiped out, Na-young continued, but not before they managed to save some of their people. They sent refugee ships to distant galaxies, carrying not just humans but the genetic memory of how to fight the Voidbringers. Dr. Hyojin felt pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. That's why our DNA has those anomalous sequences. They're not random mutations. They're engineered defenses passed down from our ancestors. The ship's display showed the final scenes of the ancient war. As their galaxy died around them, the last human scientists worked desperately to encode resistance into the genetic structure of the survivors. They couldn't save their civilization, but they could give their descendants the tools to fight back. The ship is warning me about something, Na-young said urgently. The Voidbringers here aren't the same as the ones our ancestors fought. They've been studying our resistance for millions of years. They know about our immunity, and they've been preparing countermeasures. Commander Wan-shik leaned forward. What kind of countermeasures? They're building something at the galactic core. Not just a weapon, but a device that can rewrite the fundamental laws of reality. If they activate it, our genetic resistance won't matter. They'll be able to change the universe so that organic life simply can't exist. The chamber fell silent, except for the hum of machinery. The full scope of their situation was becoming clear. Humanity wasn't just fighting for survival. They were fighting the final battle of a war that had started in another galaxy millions of years ago. There's more, Na-young said. The ship is showing me the location of other refugee populations. Our ancestors didn't just send humans to this galaxy. There are others, scattered across the universe, all carrying the same genetic defenses. Dr. Hyojin's mind raced with possibilities. If we could contact them, coordinate our efforts. The ship says it's too late for that, Na-young interrupted. The device at the galactic core is almost complete. We have weeks, maybe days, before they can activate it. Commander Wan-shik made a decision. Then we use what we have. Human pilots in captured Voidbringer ships, supported by the combined fleets of the Alliance. We strike at the galactic core before they can finish their construction. Sir, Na-young said, the ship is telling me something else. The device they're building, it requires massive amounts of energy to operate. Energy that comes from the destruction of populated worlds. Every system they've erased, every civilization they've wiped from existence has been feeding power into this machine. The horrible truth hit them all at once. The Voidbringers hadn't been randomly attacking worlds. They had been systematically harvesting the energy of entire civilizations to power their ultimate weapon. How much more do they need? Dr. Hyojin asked. Young consulted the alien display. According to this, they need the energy equivalent of one more major population center, something on the scale of Earth or the Valdris homeworld. Commander Wanshik was already reaching for his communicator. I need to contact Admiral Daejung immediately. We're not just defending our worlds anymore. We're literally fighting to prevent the end of organic life in the universe. As alarms began sounding throughout Sanctuary Station, Dr. Hyojin looked at the genetic data still displayed on her screens. Humanity had been running from the Void Bringers for millions of years, carrying the burden of an ancient war. Now, finally, they had the chance to finish what their ancestors had started. The question was whether they had enough time to strike before the Black Armada completed their ultimate weapon. In the depths of space, ancient enemies were preparing for a final confrontation that would determine the fate of reality itself. Captain Wanshik felt the hybrid ship respond to his thoughts as he guided it through the twisted space around the Void-Bringer dreadnought. The vessel beneath his hands was a combination of human engineering, Kralith biotechnology, and captured alien systems. It should have been impossible to fly, but somehow it worked perfectly. Target their primary reality manipulator, he ordered his mixed crew of humans and Kralith warriors. If we can disable that, the other ships can get close enough to attack. The Void-Bringer dreadnought was a terrifying sight. Nearly the size of Earth's moon, its black hull seemed to absorb all light that touched it. Strange energies crackled along its surface, and space itself bent and twisted around the massive vessel. Looking at it too long made Wanshik's eyes water and his head ache. "Human Captain," clicked War Prime Zektal, the Kralith warrior serving. As his tactical officer, our bioweapons are ready prepared for firing, but the enemy ship's reality field makes targeting difficult hard. Wanshik studied the tactical display. The dreadnought was surrounded by a field that made conventional attacks nearly useless. Missiles would simply cease to exist before reaching their target. Energy beams would bend back on themselves. Even the space around the ship was unreliable, with some areas where the laws of physics worked differently. "That's why we're using human pilots," Wanshik reminded his crew. "We can navigate through their reality distortions without getting lost." Behind him, the largest combined fleet in galactic history waited for his signal. Human ships formed the core of the formation, their crews serving as guides for the alien vessels. Kralith bioships had grown new weapons specifically designed to fight the Void-Bringers. Valdris crystal ships channeled energies that could punch through dimensional barriers. Even former enemies worked together now, united by the threat of complete extinction. "Sir," reported Lieutenant So Young from the communications station, "Admiral Daejung is requesting a status update." Wanshik opened a channel to the flagship. Admiral Daejung's face appeared on the screen, looking tired, but determined. Behind him, the bridge buzzed with activity as officers from multiple species coordinated the massive operation. "Wanshik, what's your status?" Daejung asked. "We're in position for the attack run, sir. The target is heavily defended, but our hybrid ships should be able to penetrate their reality field." "Good. Remember, this is just the first test. If we can prove these things can be destroyed, it'll give the rest of the galaxy hope." Wanshik understood the importance of this moment. For months, the Void-Bringers had seemed unstoppable. They erased entire star systems without apparent effort. But if a single dreadnought could be destroyed, it would prove that the Black Armada wasn't invincible. "Beginning attack run," Wanshik announced to his crew. "All hands, prepare for reality distortion effects." As they approached the dreadnought, space around them became increasingly unstable. Colors that had no names flickered at the edge of vision. Gravity shifted directions randomly. The ship's instruments gave readings that made no sense according to known physics. But Wanshik found he could navigate through the chaos by instinct rather than instruments. His human brain, shaped by millions of years of genetic memory, somehow knew how to find stable paths through the twisted space-time. "Firing biotorpedoes," War Prime Zektal announced. The Krelith weapons were living creatures, engineered to adapt to whatever defenses they encountered. As they flew toward the dreadnought, Wanshik watched them change and evolve in real time, growing new forms of protection against the reality-warping field. The first torpedo struck the dreadnought's hull and detonated. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then a section of the black armor began to bubble and dissolve as the bioweapon ate through materials that shouldn't exist. "Direct hit," So Young reported excitedly. "We're actually damaging it." The victory was short-lived. The dreadnought began to turn toward them, and Wanshik felt a pressure in his mind unlike anything he had ever experienced. It was as if something vast and cold was looking directly into his soul. "Captain," War Prime Zektal said urgently, "the enemy ship is charging some kind of reality weapon. Our biosensors detect massive space-time distortions growing." Wanshik pushed his hybrid ship to its limits, weaving through space as the dreadnought's weapon began to fire. Instead of energy beams or missiles, it projected pure erasure, areas where existence simply stopped. Anything caught in those zones would be removed from reality permanently. "Evasive maneuvers," Wanshik ordered, but he was already moving, before the words left his mouth. His human intuition guided the ship through the deadly field of non-existence, finding paths that his instruments said shouldn't be there. Behind them, the main fleet began its assault. Thousands of ships from dozens of species attacked as one, their combined firepower focused on the massive dreadnought. Valdris crystal beams carved glowing lines across the black hull. Krelith bioships launched clouds of adaptive organisms. Human kinetic weapons fired projectiles guided by pilots who could see through the reality distortions. "Sir," So Young called out, "Admiral Daejung reports multiple hits across the target. The dreadnought's reality field is weakening." Wanshik could see it too. The twisted space around the enemy vessel was becoming more stable as their attacks took effect. Whatever generated the reality-warping field was taking damage. "War Prime, prepare the quantum disruptor," Wanshik ordered. The weapon was an experimental device that combined human technology with captured Voidbringer systems. If it worked, it would destabilize the dreadnought's dimensional anchor, causing it to phase out of normal space-time. "Human Captain," War Prime Zektal said, "the disruptor weapon is ready prepared, but we must get very close near to the target for accurate, precise firing." Wanshik looked at the massive dreadnought ahead of them. Its hull was now scarred and burning from the fleet's attacks, but it was still functional and extremely dangerous. Getting close enough to use the quantum disruptor would put them well within range of its deadliest weapons. "Do it," he decided. "All power to forward shields and engines." The hybrid ship accelerated toward the dreadnought, weaving between blasts of erasure energy and reality-warping fields. Wanshik's crew worked with desperate efficiency, humans and Krelith united by their determination to strike a blow against an enemy that threatened all life. As they closed to firing range, the dreadnoughts, defenses focused on their small ship. Space around them became a nightmare of twisted physics and impossible geometries. But Wanshik held their course, guided by instincts inherited from ancestors who had fought this same enemy in another galaxy millions of years ago. firing quantum. "Disruptor," War Prime Zektal announced. The weapon released a pulse of energy that seemed to tear a hole in reality itself. It struck the dreadnought's hull and spread like a wave across the massive vessel. For a moment, the ship flickered between dimensions, becoming translucent as its anchor to normal space-time weakened. Then, with a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, the dreadnought began to collapse in on itself. Its reality-warping field failed completely, and the massive vessel was pulled into a dimensional rift of its own making. "Target destroyed," So Young reported with amazement in her voice. "The dreadnought is gone." Across the combined fleet, cheers erupted from thousands of ships. For the first time since the Black Armada had returned, they had achieved a clear victory against one of the enemy's major vessels. But Wan Shik felt no celebration. Through the captured Voidbringer technology in his ship, he could sense something that chilled him to the bone. The destruction of the dreadnought had been noticed by the rest of the Black Armada. Even now, massive forces were moving from the galactic core toward their position. "Admiral," Wan Shik reported to Dai Zheng, "we need to withdraw immediately. This victory has gotten their attention, and what's coming next will make that dreadnought look like a scout ship." As the combined fleet began its retreat, Wan Shik looked back toward the galactic core. In the distance, he could see new shapes emerging from the chaotic space around the galaxy's central black hole. Ships larger than anything they had faced before, accompanied by entities that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The victory had proven that the Voidbringers could be defeated, but it had also revealed the true scale of the enemy they faced. The Black Armada was vast beyond imagination, and they had barely scratched its surface. "So Young," Wan Shik said quietly, "send a message to all Coalition worlds. Tell them we've won our first victory against the Black Armada, but also tell them to prepare for the storm that's coming. This was just the beginning." Admiral Inho stood before the largest gathering of military leaders in galactic history. The command center on Sanctuary Station had been expanded to accommodate representatives from every major faction in the galaxy. Humans, Krelith, Valdris, Lumens, and dozens of other species filled the vast chamber, all focused on the holographic display that showed their enemy's ultimate weapon. The reality engine dominated the center of the galaxy like a cancer made of metal and impossible energies. It was larger than most solar systems, its twisted structures extending across millions of kilometers of space. Strange lights pulsed along its surface in patterns that hurt to look at directly. "Intelligence reports confirm what we feared," Inho announced to the assembled leaders. "The reality engine is nearly complete. Our scientists estimate it will be fully operational within 72 hours. A murmur of fear and determination rippled through the chamber. Everyone present understood what that meant. Once activated, the reality engine would have the power to rewrite the fundamental laws of physics throughout the galaxy. Organic life would simply become impossible, not destroyed, but transformed into something that had never existed. Dr. Mi-Kyung, the Coalition's chief strategic analyst, stepped forward with grim data projections. "Based on our analysis of the device's energy requirements, we calculate that activation will require the complete erasure of one more major population center. Earth, the Valdris homeworld, or any of the primary Krelith hive worlds would provide sufficient energy." Queen Zusthai, representing the Krelith swarm, clicked her mandibles in what the translator rendered as dark humor. "So we us have choice option. Be consumed erased to power their weapon device, or attack fight before they can complete finish it." "It's not much of a choice," replied Admiral Youngsik of the Valdris fleet. His crystalline form flickered with stress patterns. "Either way, we face extinction." Inho studied the tactical projections floating above the command table. The reality engine was positioned at the exact center of the galaxy, surrounded by the most dangerous space known to exist. The gravitational forces near the galactic core could tear apart entire fleets. Exotic radiation would kill most organic life forms within hours, and the entire region was defended by the full might of the Black Armada. The assault fleet will consist of every available ship from all factions, Inho announced. Total force, approximately 50,000 vessels of all classes. The number should have been impressive. It represented the combined military might of an entire galaxy, but everyone in the room knew it wouldn't be enough. The Black Armada had shown glimpses of its true strength, and what they had seen suggested an enemy with resources beyond imagination. "What are our chances of success?" asked Ambassador Dongwu, speaking for the civilian governments. Dr. Mi-kyung's holographic projections painted a stark picture. "Conservative estimates give us a 12% chance of reaching the reality engine. The chances of successfully destroying it are approximately 3%. The chamber fell silent. "A 3% chance of saving all organic life in the galaxy. However," Mi-kyung continued, "those calculations assume conventional tactics. The plan we're proposing is anything but conventional." Inho activated a new set of displays showing the detailed assault plan. "The operation will rely entirely on human crews serving as pathfinders through the reality distortions around the galactic core. Our resistance to the Voidbringer's influence is the only thing that makes this mission possible." The plan was audacious to the point of madness. Human-piloted ships would lead the entire fleet through the chaotic space around the galaxy's center, navigating by intuition through regions where normal physics broke down completely. They would have to thread between black holes, survive radiation that could sterilize planets, and fight their way through defenses that could erase entire fleets from existence. "The biggest challenge will be the final approach," explained Captain Seok Jin, who had volunteered to lead the spearhead assault. "The reality engine is protected by what our sensors show as a null zone, an area where space-time itself has been artificially altered. Only human consciousness seems able to navigate it safely." War Prime Geknol, the senior Kralith military commander, leaned forward with interest. "Human pilots will lead all ships through this danger zone?" "That's correct," Inho confirmed. "Every major vessel in the fleet will have a human pilot aboard, with authority to override all other navigation systems when necessary." The implications were staggering. They were asking every species in the galaxy to put their most important ships under human control, trusting their survival to a species that had only been part of the galactic community for 50 years. "The trust bond this requires is unprecedented massive," Queen Zishthai observed. "But survival need makes trust choice simple." Dr. Mi-kyung brought up another disturbing projection. "There's something else we need to consider. Our analysis suggests that even if we succeed in destroying the reality engine, the explosion will destabilize the galactic core. Multiple star systems in the central region will be destroyed." "How many?" asked Ambassador Dongwu. "Approximately 300 systems. Most are uninhabited, but some contain colonies or research stations." Inho felt the weight of command settling on his shoulders. They were planning to sacrifice hundreds of star systems to save the rest of the galaxy. It was a terrible choice, but the alternative was the end of all organic life. "The evacuation of the central systems has already begun," he announced. "But we don't have time to save everyone. Some will be lost." Captain Yejin, who had been studying the tactical data, raised a concerning point. "Sir, what happens to the fleet during the final assault? The energy release from destroying the reality engine will be massive." "Most ships won't survive," Inho admitted. "The explosion will create a shock wave that will travel across the entire galactic core region. Only the fastest vessels will have any chance of escaping." The chamber erupted in discussion as the full scope of the mission became clear. They weren't just planning an assault. They were planning the largest suicide mission in galactic history. Tens of thousands of ships and millions of crew members would likely die to give the galaxy a chance at survival. "Why should our children, die for this desperate plan?" demanded War Prime Geknol. "Perhaps better choice is to flee escape to distant galaxies." It was Captain Jin Woo who answered, speaking with quiet conviction. "Because this is where we make our stand. Our ancestors fled once before, and the Void-bringers followed them across millions of years and light-years of space. If we run again, they'll just build another reality engine somewhere else. This is our chance to end it." Admiral Inho looked around the chamber at the assembled leaders. Representatives of species that had been enemies for centuries, now united by necessity and desperation. "The final decision must be unanimous. We either commit everything to this assault, or we accept extinction." One by one, the leaders gave their consent. The Valdris, with their love of harmony and beauty, agreed to risk everything rather than see the universe reduced to lifeless void. The Kree-Lith, despite their aggressive nature, understood that some fights were worth dying for. Even the smaller species, who had little to contribute militarily, pledged their support. "Then it's decided," Inho said finally. "Fleet mobilization begins immediately. All ships are to rendezvous at the staging area within 48 hours. As the leaders filed out to prepare their forces, Dr. Mi Kyung approached Inho with one final piece of intelligence. "Admiral, there's something else you should know. Our deep space monitors have detected movement from beyond the galaxy. It appears the Void-bringers have been calling for reinforcements." Inho felt his blood turn cold. "How many?" "We're not sure. The energy signatures suggest at least 3 more Black Armadas, possibly more. They're still months away, but if we don't succeed in this assault, then this really is our last chance," Inho finished. The weight of an entire galaxy's survival rested on a desperate plan with a 3% chance of success. Outside the command center's windows, the combined fleets were already beginning to gather. Ships from 100 worlds, crewed by beings who had never fought together before, preparing for a battle that would determine the fate of all organic life. Inho watched them assemble and felt a mixture of pride and terror. In 72 hours, they would either save the galaxy or die, trying. There were no other options left. Commander Seok Jin felt space itself twist around his ship as they approached the galactic core. The final hope, a hybrid vessel combining the best technology from every species in the Alliance, groaned under the stress of navigating through regions where the laws of physics had been rewritten by forces beyond comprehension. "Sir, we're approaching the null zone," reported his navigator, Lieutenant Ye Jin. Her human intuition was the only thing keeping them on course through the chaos of twisted space-time. "The reality engine is directly ahead." Through the viewports, Seok Jin could see their target. The reality engine stretched across space like a mechanical nightmare, its impossible structures pulsing with energies that had been stolen from entire civilizations. At its heart, a sphere of pure darkness seemed to absorb everything around it. Light, matter, even the concept of existence itself. "Fleet status report," Seok Jin ordered. "37,000 ships remaining in formation," replied his communications officer. "We've lost nearly a quarter of our forces just getting here." The journey to the galactic core had been a nightmare of navigation through black holes, neutron stars, and regions where space folded in on itself. Only the human pilots scattered throughout the fleet had been able to guide their vessels through the maze of distorted reality. Behind them, the largest armada in galactic history followed in single file. Human ships led each formation, their crews serving as guides for alien vessels that would have been lost within minutes in this chaotic region. Krelith bioships had evolved new forms of protection against the exotic radiation. Valdris crystal vessels channeled their energies to create protective barriers. Even the lumens had found ways to maintain cohesion in space where their energy forms should have been impossible. "Commander," Yejin called out urgently, "the reality engine is powering up. Whatever it's going to do it soon." Siok Jin activated the fleet-wide communication system. "All ships, this is the final hope. Begin final assault. Remember, we only get one chance at this." The combined fleet spread out across millions of kilometers as they approached their target. The Black Armada rose to meet them, thousands of dark ships emerging from the shadows around the reality engine. But these weren't the same vessels they had fought before. These ships seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, their hulls shifting between states of matter that shouldn't be able to interact. The battle that followed defied every tactical manual ever written. Ships fought across folded space-time, with weapons that fired backwards through history and defenses that existed in parallel dimensions. The human pilots found themselves navigating not just through three-dimensional space, but through the underlying structure of reality itself. "Target the primary power nodes," Sok Jin ordered as his ship wove between blasts of pure entropy. "If we can disrupt their energy flow, the whole structure should become unstable." Captain Jin Wu, piloting a modified Krelith bioship, reported success as his living vessel adapted to fire weapons that existed partially outside normal physics. "Direct hit on Node 7. The reality engine's energy patterns are fluctuating." But the cost was enormous. Entire squadrons were being erased from existence, not destroyed, but simply removed from reality as if they had never been. Only the human crews maintained memory of the lost ships, carrying the burden of remembering comrades that no one else could recall. "Sir," Yejin said with strain in her voice, "I'm detecting something at the center of the reality engine. It's not just a machine. There's something alive in there." Siok Jin enhanced the sensor display and felt his blood freeze. Deep within the mechanical nightmare, he could see vast chambers containing what appeared to be preserved consciousnesses. Billions of them, trapped in crystalline structures and forced to power the very weapon that had destroyed their civilizations. "My God," he whispered. "The reality engine isn't just powered by the energy from destroyed worlds. It's powered by the minds of everyone who was killed." The realization changed everything. They weren't just fighting to destroy a weapon. They were fighting to free the trapped souls of countless civilizations that had fallen to the Voidbringers over millions of years. "All ships," Siok Jin announced to the fleet. "New priority target. We need to reach the central consciousness chamber. There are survivors in there. The preserved minds of everyone the Voidbringers have ever killed." The information spread through the combined fleet like wildfire. Suddenly, this wasn't just a desperate last stand. It was a rescue mission on the largest scale imaginable. Admiral Inho, commanding from the flagship Galaxy's Last Hope, coordinated the final push. "All human pilots, converge on the reality engine's core. Use your resistance to their mental attacks to penetrate the central defenses. Seok Jin pushed his ship to its limits, diving through layers of reality-warping fields toward the heart of the massive construction. Around him, other human-piloted vessels followed, their crews united by a determination that transcended species barriers. As they penetrated deeper into the reality engine, the defenses became increasingly desperate. The Voidbringers began using weapons that attacked the very concept.